Welcome to week 2 of our series, Draw the Line. This series, we're talking all about boundaries. And now, when you think of boundaries, you probably think of rules, what you're allowed to do. Physical boundaries, or where you're allowed to go and not go, like staying in the lines when coloring or driving. But actually, when we talk about boundaries, we aren't talking about rules and limits as a negative thing. This is actually where you get to decide. You get to draw your own lines, because as much as other people, like your parents, teachers, even God, they may tell you what you should do, but you are really the ones responsible. It's up to you. So we want to empower you this series to set those boundaries for yourself. In life, with friendships, decisions, your priorities, your relationships, your free time, you have the power of yes, and you also have the power of no. You get to decide what you allow, what you agree to, what you say yes to participating in doing, and you also get to decide what you say no to. Matthew 5:37 says, "Let your yes mean yes, and your no mean no." That is an empowering scripture. It means stand your ground, set your boundaries, and be confident in them. Let your yes mean yes, and your no mean no. Jesus in the Gospel of Luke tells the parable of the story of the Good Samaritan. You've probably heard this scripture before or heard of it. The situation is this. Jesus is speaking to a crowd, and he told them that we are called to love our neighbor as ourselves. Someone, questioning him, asks, who exactly is our neighbor? And Jesus replied, a man was going down to Jerusalem, to Jericho, and fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now, by chance, a priest was going by down the road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, take care of him, and when I come back, I will repay you whatever more you spend. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? He said, the one who showed him mercy. Jesus said to him, go and do likewise. This parable is a great example that our neighbors, whom we're called to love, is not just the people we live near or know, but everyone. The Samaritan was a neighbor to this poor man who was a complete stranger. But in addition to that, this story is a great example of boundaries. See, the Samaritan took care of this man who was hurt and needed help, but he still drew a line of what he could do. He wanted to help him. He knew he needed to help him, but he was also on his way somewhere. He couldn't completely stop his journey, so he decided to get the man somewhere safe. He stayed with him a day, paid for him to stay at the inn, made sure the innkeeper would care for him, and promised to come back. That was a hard line the Samaritan drew. He didn't forget about himself or his other responsibilities, and he also didn't completely ignore the man in need. He let his yes mean yes, and his no mean no. He said yes to being a true follower of Christ and caring for this man, but he also refused to have that mean his own life and responsibilities were stopped in its tracks. It's balance and boundaries for yourself and for others. However, that's a little bit easier said than done sometimes. There are plenty of times you know you should say no, but it's hard. Your friends are all saying yes, it looks fun, you rationalize to yourself that you can finish your homework later, or your brother will understand if you don't hang out with him like you said you would. We know the boundary, but we choose to step across it. When I was in high school, my sister and I's car that we shared was a convertible. Cool, I know, but it meant it only had the driver's seat, the passenger seat, and 2 seats in the back. While most cars have 3 seats in the back, this one, it had a space, but it just officially had 2 seat belts. Well, that right there, that's a boundary. The car, as well as our parents, had given us. You don't try to squeeze in more than 4 people. But I bet you can tell where this is going. One day after school, a bunch of us are all going to Qdoba, and my sister and I both have our teammates and friends, and we're all filling up cars and coordinating, and one of our friends, Sarah, is the only one without a ride. Qdoba is seriously less than 5 minutes away, so we say it'll be fine. We drive there all the time, and her mom will pick her up from the restaurant, so it's just this one quick trip. Boundary crossed. Well, it's a beautiful day, so we have got the top down and are having fun, and what do you know? Right as we are about to turn off the main road into the parking lot, coming the opposite direction of us, drives by our mom. Oh yeah, boundary crossed. We hold our breath, hoping that she didn't see us, but it only took a couple of minutes for our phone to ring. Boundary had definitely been crossed, and we were seen crossing it. That boundary was set. We had agreed to it. We said yes, but it didn't mean yes. We were swayed. We stepped over the boundary knowing full well what we were doing. Luckily, all that had happened was getting in trouble with our parents. Could you imagine though, if we had made that decision, if we had crossed that boundary and gotten into an accident, an extra person in a convertible with no seatbelt on, they really could have gotten hurt. Let your yes be yes and your no be no, but we hadn't. When it comes to boundaries, there are a couple of different personalities and categories that you can fall into, and they all have fun animal names to help you keep them straight. First is the chameleon. Chameleons change their skin color to the surroundings to blend in. Well, when it comes to our boundaries and decisions, you're a chameleon when you will say yes to basically anything. They easily comply. Chameleons don't realize that they have the ability and strength to say no and keep their individuality no matter the environment. Next, the mouse. The mouse avoids, to the point of saying no even to the good. They run away from trouble, hide, and avoid people, which means they have an inability to ask for help, to really recognize their needs and let others in. Then there's the mosquito. And mosquitoes, as we all know, don't respect others' boundaries. They will do what they want, they invade your space, they can't respect the limits of others, and they resist taking responsibility for their own lives, so they end up trying to control others. These people can be bullies and manipulate others. Really, in their minds, no means maybe, and maybe means yes. Then finally, koalas. Koalas are mostly non-responsive. The actual animal is only awake 2 to 6 hours a day. But when we're talking about people, koalas don't hear the needs of others. They don't take responsibility for others' feelings or attitudes and behaviors, but they can help when they are asked. Now, if you're like me, I thought of 1 or 2 people who fell into these categories pretty easily, but I'm not so sure exactly where I fall. But I do think in this situation with the car, both my sister and I were chameleons, changing our boundaries to make others happy and not wanting to leave anyone out. You're going to be able to go over the chameleon, the mouse, mosquito, and koala in small group tonight. So I encourage you to try and reflect and think about which category you may fall into or have before in different situations. We all have boundaries. We have some set by school, parents, and society, and we have boundaries that we get to set for ourselves. You have the power of yes, and you have the power of no. Let your yes be yes, and let your no be no.